I first would like to address the question, how would the Jews be able to present a decaying body in order to refute the Christian claim that Jesus rose from the dead? Again, I must say, we don't know when the Christian preaching started, and again, we do not know what the relationship there was between the exaltation and the resurrection. We just don't know. And the book of Acts, in my opinion, according to Carol Heem, is untrustworthy, and let me give you a couple of examples. According to the book of Acts, to repeat, Paul was not an apostle, which Dr. Craig has not spoken about. According to the book of Acts, Paul went to Jerusalem as a Christian 5 times. In reality, he only went 3 times. That's a big difference, I guess. So there are other cases that make me be quite suspicious of the book of Acts, and hence we just don't know when the Christian preaching started. Secondly, the first resurrection appearances, which I do not doubt, happened in Galilee, and afterwards only in Jerusalem. We do not know how long Peter and his company stayed in Galilee. And in that respect, let me say something about the so-called diverse nature of the resurrection experiences. Dr. Craig says there are so many different resurrection experiences or appearances that the conclusion must be drawn that something supernatural is behind it. No. The first appearance happened to Peter. And in a religious group that is so full of enthusiasm as the Christian group was, the first appearance or the first experience is the most important one. Once the leader of a group had an experience, this experience of his is contagious. He's the one who has the idea, and psychology of religion tells us, illustrates us, that after that many, many appearances can happen. And that was the case also in Jerusalem. There was the appearance, whatever it was, to Cephas, then the appearance to the 12, and then even the appearance to more than 500 at once, which tells us something about the nature of that experience. The Greek says at once. It must have been like a football stadium. The spirit was exploding, but that could not have happened as a first appearance. Peter must have had that appearance in order to tell the others what happened. So we cannot say there are so diverse appearances. No. It's a chain reaction. The leader had the first experience. He was telling that he had that, and then the new group got reconstituted. The only other appearance that doesn't fit in this scheme is that of Paul. Because Paul has never seen Jesus. He didn't know Jesus. He hadn't met him in person. So for Paul, it was quite a different ball game, and therefore I have suggested that the only primary experiences that there were in early Christianity is the one to Peter, and that was contagious, and Paul had a primary experience because he didn't know Peter before he became a Christian. We must always take into account the early Christian movement was expecting Jesus to come back from heaven within their own lifetime. It was a sort of millenarium movement, an enthusiastic movement where many, many things were possible. We have to take that into account. Now, let me now make some comments on various points as to the location of the empty tomb, which Dr. Craig thinks could have been determined on the basis of the witness of Joseph of Arimathea. After that, nobody knew anything about the location of that tomb, unless you accept that Joseph of Arimathea told the Christians about it. If he had told them anything about it, why was there no tradition and no notice in the Christian sources until the early 4th century about the location of the empty tomb? Very unlikely. The mother of Constantine was the one who discovered the location of the empty tomb and had a church built on there. But in the report about that, it said it was unknown. It was unknown. So that, I think, is also an argument against any knowledge about the location of the empty tomb. As for the Markan account, that's so simple and that's trustworthy, well, I have suggested that the person who is in that story, the young man, is Mark himself, who brings himself into the story and is then the first person to tell his readers, the readers of the Markan Gospel, that he was the one who preached the Gospel to the women. Because at the end of Mark 16:8, where the Gospel ends, you know it, what's in there, the women did not tell anybody about what they were told to tell. The young man told them, tell the disciple that Jesus will go before you in Galilee, but they disobeyed. And I'm saying, well, if they disobeyed, and Mark says that, there was no way for the message to get out of there what had happened. And I have suggested that Mark, by telling the story in this way, is telling the readers why this story about the empty tomb was not known in his community. The women just didn't tell anybody about it. Whereas Matthew and Luke, who were using Mark, changed that, and according to them, they obeyed it. So I take that last verse of Mark seriously. The author is claiming, is emphasizing that the woman didn't tell anybody, and I don't think we are allowed to say, well, later on they told. No, he means what he says what he means, they didn't tell. And by bringing himself into the story as Dionysius, who was also mentioned in Matthew and Mark 14, he reveals to the readers, well, it was impossible for you to know where the tomb was. The women didn't tell you, now I'm telling you what really happened. But that was in the year 70, 40 years after the crucifixion of Jesus. The Jewish notion that the disciples stole the body, according to Dr. Craig, presupposes that the Jews accepted or are witness for the emptiness of the tomb. Well, I think it's a little bit different. The Jewish notion is based on the Markan claim that the tomb was empty, and the Jews, the anti-Christian Jews, offered another anti-Christian explanation how this story could have been written. Therefore, the Jewish version of the story cannot be used to support the historicity of the empty tomb.